This episode of Connect for Life, the podcast, features a conversation with changemaker Ghanian-born Ben Akuoko, a social worker with low vision who champions the notion of diversity within disability. Disability, something often associated with the very notion of diversity itself, is a world requiring an even greater grasp and appreciation of its own diversity. Ben explains in this interview, conducted by host Melanie Taddeo, also president and CEO of Connect for Life. And Ben's preferred method of getting the message out there? His is a softer form of advocacy, wherein the focus is on telling stories and sharing experiences, which, interestingly, is what this podcast is all about. Join us in this next episode of Season 3's Profiles in Advocacy to hear one man's approach to breaking stereotypes and helping change perceptions by building bridges that generate a more meaningful understanding. It's a form of advocacy that relies first and foremost on dialogue.
So good day and welcome to another episode of Connect for Life, the podcast. I am so excited about today's conversation. I am joined by Ben Akuoko, and I'm going to let him do the official introduction of himself. However, we're going to sit down and have a conversation that really is something that I think we have to take a deep dive into, because I know that for myself, there's no cookie cutter solutions or situations when it comes to disability. So Ben, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure being here.
All right, so let's start off with the first question. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Ben Akuoko. Most people call me Ben, and I am an individual who lives with low vision. I am a cane user as well as a screen reader user. And then on top of that, I'm an individual who is of Ghanaian descent. Both my parents are from Kumasi, Ghana in West Africa. And with me, it's been such a journey, especially living with the eye condition of retinitis pigmentosa. And I say this because it's a progressive eye condition where when I was younger, you wouldn't really tell that I had sight loss. I had way more than I have now. So I wouldn't use a cane and I just zoom up my screen. So it was very difficult for people to tell that I lived with low vision. And it was so much misunderstanding. And then at the same time, not wanting to use a cane and being athletic, where I thought to myself, I wasn't actually low vision. It was just everybody saw that way when I was a kid, and just such a great journey where even with education, I'm also a master's of social work. I'm a registered social worker as well. And I completed the trifecta. I've had so many different jobs within the cross disability field. And yeah, just working with youth as well. So just so excited to be here and so excited to share my story and have some great conversations.
Excellent. Now, we go way back. I think we first met when I started Connect for Life, and I was reaching out and doing some outreach, and you were working at the YMCA at that time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow. That's many moons ago, Ben.
Yeah.
And that was employment services you were doing at that point. And I was really excited to, hear your story and hear what you were up to. And then, of course, we've, collaborated on different projects through the years. But today's conversation, I really want us to dive a little deeper into the fact that although many individuals with disabilities have a lot in common, we're also very unique and diverse, meaning there's many different intersectionalities when it comes to individuals. For example, myself, I'm a Caucasian woman that happens to be visually impaired. That's the way I identify. And that's really what it's about. It's about how the individual identifies. But looking at that as a Caucasian woman, there's things that I may face as barriers or privileges. And then as an individual who's visually impaired, again, I face different barriers So, really, it's not so cookie cutter, it's not so simplistic, but you bring a very unique and diverse perspective from your identity. So, could you share a little bit about the way you identify and then what barriers you face based on those intersectionalities?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And before I get into those intersectionalities and those barriers, I just want to round back to what you were saying about us meeting, and it's almost been 10 years. I think it's
Yeah.
even more than 10 years ago. And I feel that is very appropriate for the question that you have just asked me, because back in those days when you first met me, although I came off as very confident, well spoken, you know what I mean? I sounded like I knew what I was doing, and I sounded like I had everything with it. I found 10 years ago, I didn't really know myself. And you could chalk that up to age as well. But even with my identities of being a Black man who has low vision, I found that I didn't know how to bring those two worlds together. So even what you're saying as with your identities, even for myself, like I said, being a Black male who has low vision, especially a progressive eye condition, it was the barriers of lack of representation. And I would say lack of representation in the spaces that I occupied. So if I went to a function or something tending to disability, I almost felt like, why am I here? Like everything's just so like it's not music that I enjoy. It's themes or topic matter that, like, if I didn't step into space, I wouldn't be talking about outside of work, right? So I almost felt like I didn't see myself really represented in the activities. And then also with the other side of being in Black spaces where I didn't know how to fully express myself with disability, right? Because um and it's changed now. It's a lot more conversations with amazing organizations such as ASHE and Race and Disability Canada, uh, Teen Support Services, where you have the opportunity to bring these conversations up. But before, in my opinion, there was no spaces. And even for myself, I didn't know how to bring up, okay, I'm coming to disability space, and I feel like I want to see myself in the performances or the topic matter. And then even vice versa when it comes to like accessibility and when it comes to um, inviting disability.
And it's so interesting, Ben, because as you were saying at the beginning, you are definitely somebody different than 10 years ago, for sure. And I think it was like 11 years. But, anyways, you definitely have grown into confidence and you're understanding who you are. And that's definitely an age thing. But I also think it's life experience. So, with that being said, over the years, you mentioned you have your master's in social work. You've definitely identified and had multiple different roles and jobs, careers. What do you think was the biggest turning point for you to realize, okay, this is it. I need to be more where I feel accepted or included. What was that turning point for you?
Yeah, I would say, oh, it's multiple, but the first that came to my head was after 2020, after George Floyd,
Hmm.
and with a lot of talk about race, right? And then culture and how you felt when that moment happened. So even to have spaces where, so I'd say ASHE and then Black Voices United, which was um, a coalition, a group built from individuals who worked at CNIB,
Hmm.
and they collected individuals who identified as Black to have a space to speak about what happened. And I feel like that was the wow moment where it's
Hmm.
like, whoa, I'm allowed to talk about my blindness and talk about my Blackness. And no, I like even saying that I'm allowed to talk about my blindness, blackness,
Mhm.
and from there it was just that voila where it wasn't taboo. It wasn't something where these have nothing to do with each other. They actually do like, and I feel like that was the turning point. Working with Ashay, with being a partner, I'm on the board of directors, so I'm on the board of directors for partnership, and then just all these organizations that have an opportunity to speak about race. And I feel like that really set the stage and made a clearing where I was like, okay, you know what? Let me talk about my story. And people are actually interested in hearing my story and a perspective of, as I said, a black man with low vision. Because with when we look at blackness, especially black men, we have that assumption where it's like athletic, very strong, never ask for help. You can't you can't be vulnerable. But then at the same time, as you know, being someone with low vision or living with a disability, there is times, and even able-bodied individuals too, there's times that we have to be vulnerable,
Mhm.
and we can't shut that down. And I feel like even in the last few years, we're giving space for Black men and even BIPOC individuals, man or woman, to be vulnerable, and it's okay. And I feel like this is really pushing us to reevaluate how we are perceived and how we perceive ourselves, right?
Absolutely. And, I'm not going to get into the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion discussion. However, I do want to talk about as individuals with disabilities and organizations like Connect for Life that serve individuals with disabilities with different intersectionalities. It's important for us to understand the importance of giving safe spaces for people to be just who they are as they are.
Hmm.
Have you, you mentioned some organizations that you feel at home, we'll call it, but have you also noticed a shift amongst charities, not for profits, or disability organizations serving individuals with disabilities really coming together to allow these safe spaces?
I believe so. And as always, it's always somewhere where work does need to be done.
Hmm.
But I feel like we are really moving in these spaces where the other day I was training a student on JAWS. JAWS, for those who don't know JAWS, that's screen reader, a software used for your computer. And with that, I remember the individual was Middle Eastern, right? And I was talking to the teacher, and it was a point where we brought that up within talking about like coping with sight loss and having something a gradual eye condition that gradually gets worse. And in the past, I found that with nonprofits and organizations, it would only be black and white. We only talk about disability. We only talk about socioeconomic standpoint, or this organization only talks about race, or this organization only talks about religion and culture. But now I see that we are having discussions about different intersecting identities, whether it's race, disability, religion, gender identity, gender. We are having those conversations, and I feel that with having these conversations, people feel more themselves and people feel more invited, and it really promotes people to really push to share their stories, which is
Mhm.
so key when we're in these community spaces.
100%. I can't agree more. I think also what you touched upon there is so important is about sharing our lived experiences, our stories. This is, I find myself where I learn best is by listening to other people's stories. It educates me on another perspective, but it's also so important for us to share our experiences, not just with the disability community, but everybody, because nobody walks a mile in our shoes, right? So, how can we really understand where somebody's coming from unless we're listening? Would you say that, especially with your master's of social work, this has also been a section in your or chapter in your life, I'll call it, that has opened up opportunities for you. And if so, how?
Absolutely. So I am going to make mention about the Brightside Scope.
Please.
And with the Brightside Scope, it's an organization, well, not organization, a little side project that I created because I thought to myself that I love being within the community and doing community work, as well as I love entertainment. I love speaking. I love being in a space where there's cameras and being in a space where I get to interact with people. So I thought to myself, let me mesh these together. So making promo videos or being invited to make promo videos, doing PSAs, training individuals on diversity and inclusion, accessibility, um, just being part of that space where I could use my master's of social work. And then at the same time, like, as a young person, I always dreamed of acting and of making music and of taking an audience and taking them along with me in a story and even making people laugh. So with the Brightside Scope, it really gives me the opportunity to just bring me into a way with digital creation and through social media and show people that okay, here's what I'm doing, and as a Black man, here's the stereotypes that I'm breaking and the misconceptions. And then as a person with low vision, here's the stereotypes and misconceptions I'm bringing, as well as I'm having fun with it too, right? So one of the things I find with the Brightside Scope that makes it different from other initiatives or other advocacy platforms is the fact that it's in its name, the
Mhm.
Brightside Scope, right? So I want to celebrate where we have come. And for those who have sight loss or can't see pictures that well, when you see the Brightside Scope logo that I have, it has the sunburst, it has the colors of the sun, but it's also on a brick background. And the brick background is because I want to show the grind that I had to do to come to the space I am of the Brightside Scope. So I don't want to dismiss the work of us as advocates, where people shouldn't just look at us and be like, "Oh, you're happy, you're always happy," because that is not true. You had to really have self-reflection. You had to really push yourself. You had to pretty much go through mud to get to where you are. So the brick wall still shows an aspect of the journey and the grind, but then at the same time showing the grind, showing where you finally have came and looking at like the positive, the optimistic side of it.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I'll just say, I remember when you took the introduction to public speaking course with Connect for Life way back when you were
Yeah.
pretty shy to do that first speech, and look where you are now.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Shout out to Melanie's public speaking course. That
There
was
you go.
another big game changer too.
Yeah, no, it's amazing to hear this and see that. But I also love the fact that you are being completely honest and truthful through your truth. So again, that grind, that overcoming adversity. I know it's so cliche. Oh, people with disabilities, oh, they've done so well. But the reality is, it is a journey, and it does take that self reflection. So now, with Brightscope and with other activities that you've done, you're a big advocate. So tell us a little bit about your advocacy work, and where do you think we need to go next as individuals with disabilities and organizations that represent them to ensure that disability inclusion becomes the norm?
Absolutely. So it's a lot for sure, but I'm gonna highlight upon some specifics that do come to my mind first. So accessibility, I really want the general public to know that accessibility is for all of us. And it's not just, we're not just making things accessible, just okay for people with disabilities. So I really want to push the notion that if we have it, and someone used this terminology, I love this. I'm known for just taking terminology when I hear it because it's so amazing. But they made mention of born accessibility. And I'm like, what? That sounds so cool. Yeah, absolutely right. Instead of scrambling to make something accessible, why don't we have the mindset to just put it in where everybody can access it? And I know we can't cater to everybody, but even the majority, and then see how we can improve it as well, right? So even a perfect example, I live in my condo building, and the previous condo building I used to live in, it was touchscreens to buzz yourself in, right? And someone who is low vision, blind, that's not helpful at
Mhm.
all, right? So it's so important that okay, we have the tactile buttons, right? So even not just for a person who's blind, low vision, it could be someone who has dexterity issues, or it could be for an older population who doesn't know how to use that technology, or it could be someone who's just in a rush and they're like, I have to scroll through all this and the sensitivity of touching a screen. So just little aspects such as that really, I don't think it takes away from others. Like even looking at elevators that have raised lettering on it and braille on it, I don't think someone's saying, oh my gosh, I can't press the button because the braille's so distracting. So I almost feel the fact that we should implement accessibility in what we do, especially when it comes to built environments. And then at the same time, like even attitudes, right? And going back to the bright side scope and going back to even what you're doing with Connect for Life and Voices for Ability is the fact that I truly feel, and this is another point, I truly feel that out there, the majority of people are trying to have a mindset where they think with people with disabilities can't do something. I think it's just a lack of education and a lack of exposure. And I feel that we have to start showing the commonalities of just because we have a disability doesn't mean we don't like the same TV shows that someone likes, or like the same sports, or like to do the same hobbies. Maybe do it a little bit differently, but still liking to do it. And I feel like as we really connect to people, people can really identify with us or really relate to us. And a last point that I really want to bring up, I feel that especially when I have the bright side scope, I feel that when it comes to these issues, we should have conversations, right? Because I know we have this mindset of advocacy and fight, fight, fight. But I feel like at the same time, it's important to have conversations. It's important to be graceful in our conversations. And it's important not to have that mentality of us versus them,
Mhm.
which is something that I feel like when it's us versus them, it almost it's almost where accessibility and changing of perception is made by force and made by in being inauthentic, right? And not authentic. It's just like, oh, we have to be nice to this blind guy because we have to, right?
Mhm.
Instead of we want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So I, yeah, so well said, Ben. Thank you. And if, okay, in the perfect world, let's look forward because we've known each other for a decade now. In the next decade, I'm going to be specific. Let's say in Ontario, what would you ideally like to see happen in the terms of accessibility and disability inclusion?
Yeah, I would like to see representation.
Mm,
And another term that I absolutely have fallen in love with as well is lived expertise.
mhm,
So I would like for whomever is making decisions and whomever is working alongside the the disability community to have people who have that lived expertise. And not just lived experience, not just expertise, but as I made mention, lived expertise where people are able to work collaboratively and work together on really looking at these issues when it comes to disability, especially accessibility, especially policy, especially decision making. And instead of just being like, okay, we know this person lives with a disability, they'll give us the the golden goose on what we should do with disability. We should get people who have that experience, who have worked with individuals with disabilities, who do live with a disability, who do have family members with a disability, and going into the intersectionality aspect and going into the disability justice aspect. It's very, very important that we have diverse individuals, that we just don't have one type of person who lives with a disability. Because when we do have these discussions, we will cover the different needs of all people with disabilities.
And that's so important. I think the lack of representation in so many different areas in our province, whether that's workforce, it's in certain demographics in certain places. I think, like especially media, we know with the broadcasting program, the lack of representation of individuals with disabilities, and as again, I know with music and et cetera, as intersectionality, as people that identify differently, is lacking. And we definitely, I think, what you just said will help us work towards that goal. So that's wonderful. But I'm going to let you have the final say. But before I get there, I'd love you to share with our audience. Tell us, how can they find out more about Ben and Brights?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find out more about me and the Brightside Scope. I have my Instagram, which is brightside_scope. And then also I am on LinkedIn, which is Ben Akuoko, BenAkuoko, once again, AKUOKO. And then also I have Brightside Scope on Facebook, which is the Brightside Scope. And then last but not least, I have my website, which is www.brightsidescope.com. Once again, www.brightsidescope.com. And then I'm looking to delve into TikTok, so that is coming soon.
Excellent. You're very adventurous. But I encourage everybody to check out Ben's platforms and to learn more, because I know every time I have a conversation with Ben, it goes on for hours and hours because I've learned so much.
Yep.
So thank you, Ben, for your time. But I encourage our listeners to really take some time to reflect. Look at the intersectionalities of all the people in your life. How do they identify? And what is lacking for representation in your community? I think if we collaboratively come together and have these conversations, it's going to open up doors and opportunities and possibilities. So until next time, have a great day.
You have been listening to Connect for Life, the podcast. Connect for Life is a Canadian-based registered charity committed to eliminating barriers for people with disabilities. Visit connectforlife.ca and join us in helping people with disabilities become the champions of their growth stories.